Thank you for joining me for 3 minutes of Bible. Here's our verse, Matthew chapter 5. Actually, two verses 43 to 44. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbour and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This is a famous verse that you might have heard before. Jesus says, I tell you to love your enemies. And it's one of those verses that falls into a category that I call being good boys and girls. There's no doubt that Jesus calls each of us to be good, but being good to his standards is arguably impossible. In this verse, Jesus not only wants us to love our enemies, he wants us to pray for them too. Now, I want to stress a very important point about being good. Jesus came to accomplish far more than simply to teach us how to live, how to be good. In fact, the Bible does say that we just can't be good by God's standards, and we need saving from the consequences of our inability to be good. And that's what Jesus ultimately came to accomplish, along with changing the world and instructing us how to be good. So don't be tricked into thinking that all Jesus wanted was for us to be good boys and girls. And don't be tricked to think that it doesn't matter how good we are because we can't reach his standards and he'll forgive us anyway. Both extremes are prevalent today and both are equally way off the mark. It's important to be good. It's important to do the good works that he has for us to do. And it's necessary to seek God's forgiveness for all the times that we miss his standard of perfection. But I want to argue that it's most important to home in on the ultimate mission of Jesus, what he really came to do to restore our relationship with God through his death and our eternal relationship with God sealed by his resurrection. Now, towards the end of John's Gospel, John tells us why Jesus came. It's John chapter 20, 30 and 31. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Jesus taught us how to be good. He performed miracles. And he taught that by believing in him, his resurrection, his authority to forgive, we might have life in his name. Have a look at what Jesus said about himself in Luke chapter 4. Have a look at what Jesus says about himself both in Matthew and in Luke when he says, I came to save the lost. Faith in Jesus, Christianity, is far more than being good boys and girls. We can't be good enough to save ourselves. Please be good. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, just as Jesus did. But fundamentally, make sure you've trusted Jesus for forgiveness. For whoever trusts in him will receive eternal life. That's what Jesus said. God bless.